Hello, everyone. This is Writer Life Conversations, and today I have with me Kit Tiwal. Welcome, Kit. I think you're on mute.
Oh, can you
Yeah,
hear me now?
yeah, I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Thank you. So last year, Kit, for our viewers, last year Kit was the chair of the Women's Prize for Fiction jury, and this year her novel is The Best of Everything is on the Women's Prize for Fiction long list. So many congratulations there, Kit.
Thank you.
So for everyone else, The Best of Everything is the story of a Caribbean immigrant, Paulette. When the book opens, it's 1972. She is 29 and she's a nurse. She works in Princess Alexandria Hospital. And in the very beginning, readers find her hinging all her hopes in one man, Stenton. He is sort of a very handsome figure, and also a very distance in a way. One feels that Paulette is giving all that she can in that relationship, but doesn't seem to feel the same reciprocated by Denton. But as I mean, without giving it away, there is something that happens, and Denton is not in Paulette's life early on in the book. And one fine day, the hope that she had, the life that she had imagined, everything uh, vanishes in front of her eyes because of this inevitable news that is broken by Denton's friend, Garfield. But as we move through the novel, we realize that even though there are several inadequacies in Paulette's life, um, the love, care, kindness that she manages to exhibit in the face of events is just enormous, and it also helps make this case that if the petty differences that we seem to divide us, if we realize that there is a significant fundamental threat to human life that can unite us, that would actually save all of us. But these are themes that you will tend to explore when you read the novel, which is highly readable. There's several funny bits, which of course you will tend to appreciate when you know that even with grief comes this sort of backhanded humor that
Yes.
cannot be lost on you in the story. So that's about like paraphrasing the story in the novel for others. But welcome, Kate, and thank you so much for this novel. It's been lovely reading it.
Thank you very much. It was a joy to write. I mean, I consider myself, I've got the best job in the world because I love writing and I get to do it for a living. So, I'm very, very lucky to be able to do something I love and get paid for it and get lovely compliments. It's wonderful.
That's great. You noted in an interview that Paulette was in a manuscript that didn't materialize.
Yes.
Several times when people say, and I think when I had interviewed Ruth Ozeki, and she said that, my characters and I co-create the novel. And I have asked this question of several authors later, and I feel that this is one of that case, that's one of the finest use cases in point that we have, where Paulette actually asks the author that I am not growing here. If you
Yeah.
put me out, there'll be a different space for me where I'll present myself. Could you talk about constructing
Yeah.
Paulette and how she made a demand on you to move her out of that manuscript and write a new one?
Yes. So the first manuscript, she was one of six characters. And she really had a minor role. And Nellie, the little boy in the book, was a baby, and Paulette was in the maternity hospital. And I have no idea why somebody so quiet and somebody so reserved and somebody that doesn't like the limelight, but she was like, this is my, you do know this is my book. She would just became this character who was like, I haven't got enough space. You're not telling the story properly. That isn't what's going on here. And I was just like, oh my life, and then but as a writer, you absolutely know, because what happens when you have a character that is too big for a book, it disrupts the structure so that the book feels unwieldy, it doesn't work, it's turgid, it's not a nice read because there is something that needs space around it. It's like having a room with 7 sofas in it. You can't have a room with 7 sofas in it. 2 sofas at the most. And then when you take them out, you say, oh, this is a big room. I thought it was a small room because it's got too much furniture in it. And that's exactly what it is when you've got a character that's too big, too loud, too much to say. And Paulette's not loud, but she has a presence. And at the minute I took her out of that book, oh my goodness, it was quick. It was quick to write because she was like, okay, let's go. I'm going to tell you what happened now. And sometimes, and you will have heard this, I'm sure, from other writers, it's like taking dictation. It is not like I'm going, oh, how do I say that? What's going to happen? You're like, yeah, I've got it. And you're typing away. And she said, and then that happened, and then that happened. It's great. It's wonderful. That's a true character because it's very much like all of us. If we have a friend and you say, oh my goodness, I can imagine what they would do in that situation because they're a real person. You know that if you take them to a certain event, how they're going to behave because they're a real person. That's exactly what it is with a real character. You don't have to go, would she do this or would she do that? Because you know what she's going to do. So it eliminates other possibilities and you just think, right, it's easy.
Absolutely. And I mean, as you said that like taking dictation and just following the character what the character demands. But if we talk about that, I had a different question in mind, but when you said this, I'm just curious to know because Paulette is actually taking dictation from an absent present figure, which is her grandmother, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
So,
absolutely.
so
She's very under the spell of her decent Christian older woman, tell you right and wrong grandmother, very, in a way, and I'm sure those archetypes and those real characters still exist, but much more so in my lifetime, those women were everywhere. The older guardian of morality, where you don't do this, you don't do that, you behave like this, you don't behave like that. They know the rules and the regulations and the strictures of behavior. They know everything. And there is no social, family, moral, or religious situation that would ever escape them because they know how to behave. And Paula, as you say, and it's a great way of putting it, she's got that voice in her head. You don't do that. No, you don't do this. Yes, you do that. Very much based on the Christian scriptures, but nevertheless also based on really West Indian culture and West Indian norms and rights and wrongs. So yeah, it's very much, and of course she doesn't listen because we don't listen. So Paulette's not like Paulette's taking the dictation and behaving herself. She's not. Nevertheless, that is the unspoken words that are coming to her.
yes, and you're so right that she at least like I think that's the best kind of choices that she has in the face of events because otherwise she'd never had any choice.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for Paulette being brought up as a Christian, which was very much my father's experience of life. You're brought up as a Christian and you don't stray from that. And if you do stray from that, not good things will happen. And guess what happens to Paulette? She strays from the path and not good things happen. And so she's carrying that burden of if only I'd listened, if only I'd, kept the scriptures, then I wouldn't be in this position.
Absolutely. And I, because, I was also drawn to the fact that maybe, or maybe this is a conjecture, or maybe you can help me that whether this was the case or not. The 70s was a time in when this magazines, this magazine culture was, right at the, it was incredibly on the scene, so much that you needed advice for random things, as much as we're
Yes,
using Instagram for. But I think that was a very different time, because it actually signaled access and capital, because you needed to have that. It was not available for free, and of course it was at a premium. And yet she's, sifting through these magazines, looking for recommendations. A part of me thinks that maybe because, of course, like, this is a single woman, such an incredibly hard life that she's leading. There is nobody to advise her or anything, so she makes notes. And it's such a cutesy moment, and also a moment of great vulnerability, where she's taking notes that, I have not had that advice, so I'm taking notes. So we're just wondering if you could help uh, share that, uh, in that time, because there was nobody else, she was relying on this. But at the same time, it is not lost on people that several of such experiences atomizes people a lot. So we're just wondering
yes,
if we could talk about Paulette being shaped, her choices being shaped by this magazine culture, also
yes.
loneliness, and also bereft of love, yet having an enormous capacity to express and exhibit and actually love people.
Yes. I mean, the magazine culture of the 70s and 80s and 90s was very much the social media of its time. So at the back of every magazine, you'd also have the agony aunts, oh, my husband says I'm fat. What should I do about it? Whatever. And, you'd have the answers. And this is, you know, it's really hard to remember life pre-internet. If you wanted to buy an outfit, there were a few shops, and you went to the few shops where all your friends went, and you bought the things from the few shops. And so these magazines became a portal to other shops. Not that you could buy anything from a magazine back in the day, but you could certainly style yourself. And so they wielded enormous power in terms of, oh, is your bedroom yellow? That's the color of hope. It's, oh, right, yellow bedroom. And so you became massively influenced by it. And as I was saying, for Paulette, she has no sisters. She has no mother. She has no grandmother in the country. She has very little community. She doesn't know how to say, is yellow a good color for a bedroom? She's got no one to bounce that off like we do now. You could put into Instagram tomorrow, I'm decorating my bedroom yellow, and I guarantee you'll have 500 answers from someone from all over the world. Don't do yellow, do mustard, do it grey. Oh, I did it, it was a mistake. You've got the world to ask. You've got the world to look at with the internet. Oh, yellow bedrooms on Pinterest. 80 yellow bedrooms. So Paulette, in the absence of that, and in the absence of input from a great big community and friends, Paulette's turning to the luxury, and the magazines were a massive luxury. They were expensive back in the day. She's got the luxury of a magazine that's talking to you, how to lose weight before Christmas, how to have the yellow bedroom, how to knit that jumper and so that everyone looks at your children and thinks they're well cared for. And it's that subtext of decency, subtext of do this, you matter, do this, you look good, do this, you get the man, do this, you've got a happy bedroom. All of that. Where's the alternative? We've got alternatives now. I don't think a yellow bedroom's quite right. I might do it purple. There's no alternatives. I remember I got married when I was 25. So this would have been 1985. And we had to go and buy some furniture. One shop, there's one shop near me, and I don't know the other shops. So I go to my one shop, and there's like four sofas that I can afford. So I'm having one of four sofas, and all my neighbours are having one of four sofas, and all my cousins are having one of four sofas. That's the choice. Now I could have probably 4,000 sofas, you know, the choice is immense. Back in the day, it was not like that. And so for Paulette to have this guiding light and to have this seal of approval on her decisions and have this, oh, this is the route to happiness, do follow these rules, you'll be safe, you'll be fine. It's massively important for her. And still, even with the millions and millions of people on Instagram, why have we got influencers? We've got influencers because they are the magazine. They are someone that go, oh, this lipstick, that's going to make you look great. I fall for it. I'll go and buy the lipstick. I want to look great. I'm not immune to that. I know it's bullshit. I still go and buy the lipstick because I want the fantasy of belonging and looking better and looking thinner and looking younger and all the rest of it. And I could really identify with Paula. I never bought the magazines. They were too expensive back in the day for me. They were too expensive, but I used to browse. And I remember I think it was maybe my 30th birthday, my sister bought me a subscription to a magazine. Oh my goodness me, it came every month. I kept them magazines. It was a big deal. And I really wanted Paulette to have that outlet and that sense of a treat. I bought two magazines. Wow. I'm really going to be clued up now. I'm going to turn my life around. It's New Year, two magazines. I'm down with it. And I can really remember that. I can remember that time in the 70s.
So right, and there are cultural parallels in India too, where they had their own like kind of magazines to help women out. But yeah, that's very interesting to put that way. And also, I mean, if you come to talk about choices, the kind of choices that she makes, thinking that would be the best, how radically the world has changed. The influencers are saying that what they are saying is the best, but there could
Yes,
be the best among all of them. So when you're spoiled for choices, there is no good, better, best. So yeah, and you're so right that having this story, to have this story in the pre-internet era. I mean, it's just it just speaks a very different world to you when you talk
yes,
about choices and quote unquote the best of everything, because there
yes,
was rarely more there to choose from. I I'm also we'll skip that part which leads us to meeting Shirt and Tie and
yes,
Nelly. So I'll let readers discover why that happens. I was wondering the kind of vocabulary that Paulette uses. She gets to know that this is Francis slash Frank, but she continues to say shirt and tie, right?
yes,
She knows that the child's name is Cornelius, and she calls him Nelly, right?
yes,
And then towards the end of the book, we see how when she's told by Birdie that you call me Curtis because I'm a man, and Curtis is a man's
yes,
name, and Birdie's not a man's name, and she has these slips like twice, but then she corrects and composes herself and makes herself to use that word Curtis. I was just wondering if you could talk about Paulette's vocabulary, because that's actually rooted in her sense of care, how she sees the world, because for her the first image actually is the guiding principle of how she imagines the person to be. So shirt and tie,
yes,
right? So
yes,
that's shirt and tie.
yeah,
All she can imagine is like a white person who cannot be harmed, and I don't
yeah,
see that in my man, so that's shirt and tie for me. So
yes,
please.
yes. Um, Basically, and this is so, so true of the West Indian community, lesser so to Irish, but the Irish do it as well. If you are called by your name, there is something wrong. There is no way I would, I am never called by my name. Never. If my brother rang me and said, hello, kid, oh my God, someone's died. He calls me ugly, right? He's called me ugly all my life. So he will ring up and say, hi, ugly. And I say, hi. That's normal. And my dad had about five really good friends. One was called Judas because he told on his friends when they'd stolen something, and he was about five. But Judas became a 50-year-old man and he kept the name. There was another one called Grumble, right? You can guess what Grumble did. Miserable. He's called Grumble. There was another one who was short and fat, and he was called Stump. And then there was Sugar, who's very sweet looking, very sweet, golden tongue. I never knew them men's name, ever, ever, ever. I couldn't use them because that would have been disrespect. I couldn't say hello, Stump. I would have to say hello, but I don't know what their names were. And my dad, who was 6'6", was called Lofty because of his height. Now, that is so normal. If, you know, I've got friends now and I have to think, what's their name? I don't really know their name because I will call them. There's one called Fool, Fool, just Fool. That's his name. Everyone calls him Fool. And for Paulette to actually call him Francis Bowen would have been a very strange thing. Any West Indian reading that book would have thought she wouldn't do that. She might not call him shirt and tie, but she'd call him something like when he says he drinks the drink, white man style. She might have just called him white man, but she would have called him something. It's both a form of love. If you get called by a name, it's a form of love. It's also a form of distance. So you would have it on both sides. It's the intimate where you're ugly. I mean, I'm trying to even think of my brothers and sisters' proper names. I don't call. They've all got a name, and they've had it since they were 3. So that's their names to me, and that's the intimate, loving way. If so, when I took my son to school, there was one of the parents who was very posh, and I didn't like him, and I just called him Jumper because the man's always wearing the same jumper. So his name's Jumper, and it's a form of distance. That's not his name. I know his name, but to me, he's Jumper. Like, I'm going to give you that name as a way of keeping you away as well. So Paulette uses both. She uses the Nelly, the intimate, the derivative of Cornelius, which makes him cute and lovable and not formal. And then shirt and tie is both a distancing thing and also that you are so different to me. I don't know anyone that wears a shirt and tie, so you're different. You're a white man. Um, and that was there is no West Indian person that would read that book and not know why she calls him shirt. They would just get, yeah, shirt and tie. It would just be the norm. And for Curtis to say to her, call me bird, that's really cruel. That's not nice. You don't say that. First of all, you don't say that to your mother. You never say that to your mother. You wouldn't say it if you had any respect. And also, it's such a lovely, intimate, beautiful name that she's given him. That she wants to use. It's a reassertion. It's a rekindling of the mother-son relationship. It's a warm, lovely thing. And for him to say, it's all changed now, Mom. I'm a big somebody. I want to be taken seriously. I'm not the little boy. I'm not your little son. It's hurtful to her, but she sees it for what it is, the man asserting himself. But it is there in the book as another blow of distance. It's not just the physical distance. In the time that he's been there, in the few short months he's been there, things have changed. You're not coming to see Bird, you're coming to see Curtis.
Absolutely, and you're so right there. I mean, I think we share a lot in the West Indian culture and Indian culture because that so happens to be the case. We've rarely known several relatives' names because we just call them by something that we have been told, that's their
Yes.
name. And very interestingly, so I was born in a village in Uttar Pradesh, which is like near to the capital, Delhi. But there the usual practice was you will be named, so whatever your name is in the birth certificate or school or whatever, that's separate. That's an official thing, so that is for your identity card purposes, right? Governmental
Yes. Yeah.
purposes. So, and my mother my mother would tell me, so the simple hack was where you were born. So like even I am, and none of my siblings have, we were born at home. through midwives and everybody. So I mean, most of the people I know, even though like I am old and like my peers were born in hospital, probably because they were in city. None of us were. So she has a hack. Like it was very simple. Wherever you are born, you are given that name. I said, what do you mean? So you have different parts. So a very Hindi word of veranda would be your name. So wherever you're born, so wherever your mother went into labor pain and wherever she birthed you, and so there was he's still there. Somebody in our village, like my age, or probably a year or two elder to me, he because her mother went into labor pain and it was it was an Independence Day parade and she had to be under a tree and surrounded by midwives and birth him. He was called Jhanda. Jhanda means flag in English. so, so, so he was given
God,
the name flag. So you're so right. You'll never
yes.
know in our
You
culture.
never know the real name. Yeah, and I think it is, especially if you're working class, if you're a subclass, as
Yeah,
I wasn't even working class, poor. It's also a way of saying that's for them. That's
yeah,
the official nonsense. You want me to have that? I've got that. I've got the birth certificate. I've got the passport. But actually, this is a different world. This
yeah.
is our world. This is how we roll. This is how we behave, and it's a sort of reassertion of a culture. It's these are the rules now, and like I say, if my dad used to call me, and my dad used to call me by my proper name, and you were like, oh my God, my dad's called, oh, that was serious. When your dad calls you by your name, you know you're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a form of intimacy to signal that. And as you
Yes,
said, rightly said, it's also a form of distance. You will give that person a different name if you want to signal distance.
yes,
Yes,
yes, yes,
that's also the case. I so before we move on to other questions, there's one question that I want to ask because that perhaps isn't discussed, or maybe it has been discussed. You publish your first book when you're 56. And that's like,
yes.
somebody who wants to be a writer, they never want to hear that thing. I remember talking to Bonnie Garmus, who published her first book when she was in her 60s, mid 60s. And I mean, I have got compared to other writers, very different responses. Could you tell us, like, how was it like to get your first book out at that age? And with the benefit of hindsight, one can say, okay, yes, this writer was sure of the kind of story they were writing, but there are immense risks there. There are immense risks there. The story could take that much time to produce.
Yes,
And you had only that much time to convince others to take a bet on you and for you to publish books.
yes,
And if you're so interested, then there will be several other books, but where's the time? So it's like constant race with time. And also you are
yes,
labeled a different way. Today, the way books are marketed are very different, right? So for example, this question will never be asked of others, right? But it's also a form of question. Oh, you were 56, and I'm
yes,
asking this
yes,
for this kind of conversations to divert somewhere else, because I don't feel that there should be a need for anyone to explain if they publish a book at 25 or 56. So your thought?
yes, yes. So I got published at 56, but I didn't start writing till I was in my mid 40s. So it wasn't, and it is very true for some people that they will have started at 25 and take 30 years to get published. That wasn't I never ever thought about being a writer, never. It just happened to be something I was doing when I was 45. So I probably tried for 10 years, but I didn't try and get a book published for 10 years. I was writing short stories and other things. So I consider myself very lucky, and I consider myself having served a relatively short apprenticeship in novel writing. And of course, by the time I'm writing mine, and this was the third novel that got published, not the first. I wrote two that never got published. And by the time this book came along, I was very sure of what I wanted to say about the world, not just about this book. I was very much me. I wasn't 25 thinking about what do I think about life. And there's some very mature 25-year-olds. Look at Sally Rooney writing great stuff. So it's not, wisdom is not an automatic thing that arrives when you get to 50. It just doesn't. But for me, it was. I was a fool at 25. I didn't know what I thought about the world. By the time I've got to 55, yeah, I know what I think. And I was pretty uncompromising about what I wanted to say and what I thought about the world and where I wanted to go. So I consider myself very, very lucky to have got published at 55. And I feel about 37. So for me, age is so immaterial. I cannot imagine not writing. I cannot imagine it mattering. I think it does matter for the publishing industry. However, not to me. I feel just like ready to go, warming up, warming up. Yeah. In fact, I remember saying to somebody, I am mid-career. I'm mid-career, I'm 66 now, and I consider myself mid-career, not end of career, certainly not beginning, but mid-career. Maybe I've got another 15, 20 years to go. As long as I can, remember my name, I'll be writing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I also, as you said it, like, others should not inform you when you should write, and what your
Absolutely.
where you are at your career stage. Uh, uh, in the writing of this book, I mean, such short sentences, and the way you present the narrative as if it appears that, it was very simple sort of a tale that is unfolding. Could you talk about your writing process in general, and how writing simply is like the difficult thing, which is not obvious? I think it's also I mean, on the reader's part, you make their job easy, but I'm unsure if people are mature enough to understand that's the most difficult part to do.
Absolutely, really difficult to write, to not be yourself on the page, because that's what you're not doing. I absolutely do not write like that, do not speak like that. But Paulette does. And so I have to inhabit her worldview, her vocabulary, her sentence structure, her preoccupations. She's worried about the dinner, blah, blah, blah. I'm not worried about the dinner, but she is. So I have to be her, and I have to censor myself from how I would like to describe the sofa, and how she wants to describe the sofa, how she wants to describe the young girl barn owl, and how I would describe the barn owl. Completely different things. I have to inhabit her space. And I am a great plotter. I plot my books very, very thoroughly before I start. So I would maybe plot this novel for 6 months before I wrote anything. And in those 6 months, I will be thinking, will that happen or will that happen? Will that happen or will that happen? Will she do that? And I might play around with tone and voice, or I might do little character studies. I might write a couple of sentences and like, do I like that sound? And then there is a point at which, bam, there it is. And then the challenge is to be true to the voice. The challenge is to be true to the style, the tone, the psychic distance, and always remaining true to the characters. Character comes first, second, and third with me. And obviously, with different characters comes different diction, different ways of speaking, different sentence structure, which you have to remember as you go through it.
I was listening to your interview, Why I Write, where you talk about manipulation. And I was very much interested in that because, there are several, um, stories which do not signal that, it's a writer manipulating you into believing that thing. But there is a foregrounding there, because if one happens to read the book end to end, they'll notice in the acknowledgement section the kind of, you did research in forest as well, but didn't. Yeah, that's okay. So you did several research that didn't make it to the book, and one that did, bang on. One sees that why Nelly is the way he is because of the kind of. So I was just wondering if you could talk about that manipulation, and also how it is actually supplemented with enough research.
Yes, the research has to be. In fact, I'm teaching a 2-hour course on research on Tuesday. The research has to be so light touch. You cannot, I did months of research about whether or not a pregnancy is viable with someone that's had brain damage. I did months of research of how that child would be born. I did months of research of the effects of certain drugs on people that are experiencing depression and so forth. So much research, barely there, but I have to feel confident. I have to know it so that it's light touch, it's sprinkled in, it's sprinkled, if at all. I did loads of research on forests that never appeared in this book because it was a route I thought I was going to go down. And you owe it to your reader. You have to respect your reader's time. Your reader's spending maybe £10, £15 on the book. They're going to spend 7 or 8 hours with you. Be respectful of their time and make this it's not my journey. It's the journey of another human being. Make it enjoyable. Manipulate them, of course, manipulate them. You want them to go, and laugh. And, you want that. And that's respecting their time. This is not going to be boring for you. You could have spent that £10 on cake and coffee. You could have spent that £10 at the cinema. So if you spend that £10 with me, I'm going to make it a good experience for you. And I truly believe that that's how writers should treat the reader, with respect. Not that you write for the reader. You don't think, oh, I'm going to write it for that person, but you do your best work so that the reader is having this experience. And as a writer, you have that experience. You know when you've done your best work. You know that at the end of any book that you've written, it's good. You know if it's good. You want to stand up and say, that's my book. Never send a book out into the world where you think, that's not a very good chapter. Take the chapter out. Take the chapter out. You make it the absolute best it can be, out of respect for the person that's going to buy it and read it.
Thank you so much, Kit. For others, we have actually discussed Kit's book in detail about care, work, Paulette, sisterhood, and of course on Nelly and other things. And these were additional questions that we had, and which is why it will be published on my YouTube channel and not in the newspaper which I'm writing for. So please do check that interview out as well. And it's been a great pleasure having you, Kit, and for you to be so generous in your responses and your time. Thank you so much, and all the best.
Thank you so much. And can I just say that they were the best questions I've had in a long, long time. Very thoughtful, very thought-provoking. And for any writer, it's a joy to have good questions. Really, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.